WWDC Anticipation, and the talk show without Apple. This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is supported by Insta360 and their new Insta360 X5 flagship camera. Visit store.insta360.com and use the promo code MacVoices to get a free invisible 114 centimeter selfie stick worth $24.99 with a standard package purchase. Limit first 30 standard package purchases only. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, it's Tuesday night. That must mean it's MacVoices Live, which is a good thing because it really is MacVoices Live. We do this Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern, whatever time it is, wherever you are, at youtube.com/MacVoices TV. You could join us in the chat like some of our friends are already tonight. We have a number of people already in the chat. Nobody said, well, I think one has said hello so far. I think the rest of them are just hiding, waiting to see what happens here. We got some stuff to get to, like we always do. I think there are a couple potentially incendiary topics tonight, so we'll see how it goes. Yeah. Well, we don't want anything boring. So let's go around the table, see who's here, and then we'll get to it. And I want to flip it around this time just because Eric Bolden has something really new behind him. So we're going to start with Eric. Eric, good to see you. What is your background tonight?
In one ear, out the other ear. Tonight, it's wood ducks.
Okay. And this was taken recently?
Yeah. This was, I think, yesterday. You're driving along and all of a sudden you see ducks scattered everywhere. You pull over, you wait for a second. That one wood duck right there starts screaming at everybody to kind of clump together, and they come zipping all back again, kind of like, they're on little springs. Scatter and back in there. And then they're heading off to go, off to school or something. I don't know. That, to me, it looks like a bunch of different ages of ducks. So I'm not sure how many different ages they kind of threw in here, but there is a story there somewhere. I didn't get it.
And either are we, I guess.
Yeah, it looks very peaceful. It looks very peaceful.
Yeah, it's nice.
So, good. Well, it's good to have you. Marty Jencius, good to have you as well. You were doing some traveling this weekend. I'm glad you made it back and were able to make it here.
Yeah, I did some traveling this weekend, went to Chicago to pick up 2 Cubs games and only got to see one because I got the cherished tradition of going to a Chicago emergency room with a little bit of a health scare. And everything's okay. But, when you have health scares, those close to you, like my wife has come up with a pet name for me now. Do you want to know what the pet name is?
Well, of course.
Absolutely. If I don't have to edit it.
You can't eat that. That's her pet name for me.
That's a pet name? More of a phrase.
Yeah. Well, whatever way you want to take it.
Okay. Well, I was afraid of what might be coming. So
you.
Webb Bixby is here. Webb, it's good to have you. Does the Quote Queen have a pet name for you that you can repeat?
No.
No, she doesn't. Or no, you can't repeat it.
I'm just leaving it at that. So
okay.
No. Right. The pet name is No. So
that's fair.
Hey, honey, no.
Okay. From now on, Webb Bixby will be known as Dr. No.
Yep. Yeah. Just no. I don't have my PhD. So.
No. Checking in from a thunderstorm, which is kind of unusual for where he lives, Jim Ray. Jim, good to have you. I hope that everything holds up okay.
Me too.
Okay. Good to have you.
Yeah, I definitely. It's good so far.
Okay. Okay.
Lights are still on.
Wow. Last but not least, David Ginsburg is here. David, good to have you.
Great to be here. And it's like 85 here today. So we got some warm weather. But great to be here. Looking forward to the chat and getting anxious about WWDC.
Exactly. And I lied. Dave is not last but not least. Jeff Gamet is last but not least because he snuck in under the wire. Jeff, good to have you. Glad you made it.
Yeah, go me.
Yep. As usual, Jeff, we could use a little more gain from you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was trying to catch it before you got to me, but you are far more efficient than I am.
Well, that's not a problem. Not a problem.
Oh,
Just
holy crap. You can use a lot more from me.
yeah.
How about that? Is this better?
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah.
A little too much.
Yeah, back it down just a little.
Oh, fine. I see how it is. Yeah, give us more, Jeff. Give us more. Oh, that's too much.
Yes.
No.
Okay, is this better?
You get that a lot, Jeff.
Thank you.
probably,
Thank
right?
you.
I do get that a lot, yes.
Eric, you okay over there?
Yeah.
You're reaching for the drink. That's a mistake. That's a mistake. Oh gosh. Well, one thing we're not going to do for a couple reasons. We're not going to do.
Oh wait, Chuck.
Oh yeah, Jeff.
Underpants.
We already did.
too
We already
late.
took care of that for you.
Yeah. That was
We already took care of that for you.
pre-show. Yes,
I do
But thank you.
appreciate that.
But thank you.
And then
So-
we were called names that we're brainwashed by Mr. Gamet was what someone on this panel said. I'm not saying who.
Well, all I'm saying is that I'm really proud of all of you.
It was Webb and I were in harmony with this. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've never heard. I mean, we're gonna have to start rehearsing a little more to get it right.
No.
No,
I try to stay out of other people's underpants.
Yeah.
Oh, Joe.
Marty, I'm going to have to draw you a diagram.
This is
No diagrams.
this is off the wall already. Well, we're not going to spend a lot of time on WWDC because by the time that, unless you're hearing us live, by the time most of you hear this, there's a fair chance that WW will already have happened or be underway. I'm going to try maybe to do a little editing, rearranging, and get this out ahead. But at this point, you've all seen the rumors, you've all heard the speculation, and so it is going to be what it is. And we will try to do a reaction to it on next week's show because it'll be the day after the keynote. So we will have had time to digest what is announced and all the rampant speculation that will occur. One thing, though, I did want to touch on, because we had touched on this a little while back, sort of from a different angle, and that is that this year there will be no Apple executives on John Gruber's talk show live at WWDC. And I know there have been a lot of folks talking about this, a lot of folks speculating as to whether this was a bit of retribution for some of John's comments about Apple and Apple in general, Tim Cook maybe in specific. I was kind of anxious to see what you all thought about this. Is this a good move? Is it a bad move? Does it make sense? And that's sort of the question I have an answer for, but I'm going to throw it out to the panel and see, and Jim, I'm going to start with you since you're wearing a Daring Fireball jacket, and obviously a fan of John, because otherwise why would you wear his jacket? What do you think about this?
When he came out with his post a couple months ago, that was my instant, I wonder if Apple will still show up to his soiree. So I guess I nailed that. I think it's really stupid on Apple's part, and kind of chicken. That they're afraid to appear in public. As far as for John's event, I think it might be a good thing. I honestly thought those events were getting kind of boring. Um, there was never any news. John always pulled his punches on the questions he asked. I think, in the interest of being able to have continued access. So, there was never any breaking news and hardly anything of interest. And in fact, last year I had a ticket to the event and went to the party ahead of time, what do you call it, reception, and then left and went to another event and didn't go to the actual event itself. I figured I could watch it on YouTube. Um, so, but I think on Apple's part, it makes them look really small. But I'm not really surprised. It seems to fit in with everything else. I think last year the event didn't sell out, and I have a feeling it probably won't this year either. I'm not going to try to get a ticket this year because there's a couple other events that I'm already signed up for that I'd prefer to go to.
You're just in high demand, Jim.
Well, no, I'm not in high demand. I mean, I'm just attending, Paul Hudson's having an event from 4 to 6, and I guess maybe something else till 7, and then there's a iOS Dev Happy Hour event, which is what I left Gruber's event last year to go to, because I figured I'd rather hang out with people in person than be part of 1,000 people in an audience. So I feel the same way, this year. Although the reception last year was really good, and I met with people in person. So, but there's just no way I can't be at Paul Hudson's thing and at the reception at the same time. So,
yeah. Well, you'll have to bring us back a party report next week as to how everything went.
It's going to go great. It was awesome last year. I'm sure it's going to be great this year. But unfortunately, this Paul Hudson thing is also the same time as MacVoices. So I won't be.
Oh, well then. Sorry, Paul. Jim won't be there.
Maybe I can Zoom from the audience there.
Yeah, that would be unusual, and so feel free if you can do it.
I'll see if I can figure out some way to pop in.
Yeah, Marty.
I'm going to be a little more forgiving for Apple on this than Jim mentions. I kind of think they found this. It's like going to a wedding. You get invited to a wedding. It's like you don't really want to go, but it's time for you to go anyways. And I think this gave them a perfect opportunity to kind of say, no, we're not going to do this year. We're going to try and separate our message out from whatever messages in the past has come through this. So I just see them, I think they took advantage of they are taking advantage of a bad situation. Unfortunately, I think people are going to look at it and say, well, that's pretty petty of Apple. But I think Apple saw what happened with their messaging, and they'd rather have more control on it than speculation coming out of a media person. So,
okay, Jeff.
But don't you think this indicates that we don't feel that we can control the message if we, we can't take the heat, basically?
I think they have made this decision, and they're gonna, they've made decisions in the past that to get out of a fight, basically, if all they're going to do is try and prove that they've been misrepresented, if they feel that way, then it just brings up the misrepresentation. If you're not even on the playground, you won't get into a fight.
Jeff?
Jim and Marty are both right. So we can just end the show right there because nailed it. However, here's my perspective. I'm with Jim. I believe that that Apple was like, screw you, I'm going home, because they didn't like what John said, and so they're not going to talk to him anymore. The other side of that is, if Apple saw value in talking to Jim still, they would. So their calculus says it's not worth the money we have to spend on our executives to go and chit chat with John for a couple hours. Now, all of that said, I think it would have been a good idea for Apple to do this anyhow, because it would have been a really, really good opportunity to have a casual yet focused discussion about what they're doing with AI technologies. And sure, they're going to give that message to us in the way they want, because as Marty said, they want to control the message. Apple always wants to control the message. So I think they should have done it, but regardless, I have a feeling that it would have been a tough sell for them this year to do it, because I don't think they're seeing the value in it anymore. And the fact that Jim didn't go to the event last year, they are apparently not selling out tickets anymore. It doesn't seem to have the draw that it once did. So there's not as much value for Apple.
I should back up a little bit. It must have been close to being sold out, because it was a big crowd, but I'm pretty sure there were some tickets still available, and it's a good sized theater.
It is.
I think it's like 12 or 1,500 people, and considering that they don't have 5,000 people in town for Dub anymore.
True.
And it's all done on very short notice in terms of people buying the tickets and whatnot. And I would never have not gone, other than the fact that it was conflicting events. And I just made the calculus that, hey, I'd rather, meet up with people in person. And I knew the event would be on YouTube and I could watch it at my leisure. Right.
Mm-hmm. Everything you're saying validates to me why the value isn't there for Apple the way it used to be.
And the audience is way beyond what's in the room. I mean, that YouTube gets, I'm sure, hundreds of thousands of views. And I don't think there's any cost, I mean, it's in San Jose, they live there. The cost is drive down to San Jose for, 2 hours. That's it. So there's no budget, but, I think either they wanted to teach John a lesson, or, I can't imagine they thought he would ask them tough questions, because he just doesn't do that. But, maybe it's like, well, you're no longer our tame lapdog in every post you make. Maybe I think, it doesn't seem like they're doing anything else either. Like, well, it's like maybe they could have, we'll go on David Sparks' show or something else, but they're just saying, we're doing nothing. We don't need to interact with this community at all.
Yeah, I mean,
Chuck, did you invite them on here?
No. I can explain why later.
That.
And I'm happy to, actually. This edition of Mac Voices is supported by Insta360 and their new Insta360 X5 flagship camera. Visit store.insta360.com and use the promo code MacVoices to get a free invisible 114 centimeter selfie stick with a standard package purchase. But hurry, first 30 package purchases only. Whether you're a weekend traveler, a social media creator, or just someone who wants to capture more of life, The Insta360 X5 is the one camera that does it all. This is more than just a 360-degree camera. It's your action cam, your vlogging cam, your drone cam, and even your cinematic cam, all in one pocket-sized powerhouse. With a groundbreaking 8K 360-degree video, you can film everything around you, then decide later what your audience sees. Want buttery smooth action shots? Flow state stabilization makes sure your footage stays shake-free. No gimbals needed. Need dynamic shots without a crew? The invisible selfie stick literally erases itself from your footage, turning any scene into a drone-like shot. The X5 adapts to you with swappable lenses for different needs, a rugged build with a new wind guard for crisp audio outdoors, and advanced editing tools in the Insta360 app that make professional-looking results easy. From capturing family vacations to filming client work, the X5 proves that one camera really can do it all, and without compromise. Visit store.insta360.com and use promo code MacVoices to get a free 114cm invisible selfie stick with your purchase. But hurry, that offer is only good for the first 30 orders. Store.insta360.com. Thanks to Insta360 for their support of MacVoices. Dave?
I was going to say, it's been a sensitive topic with the Apple. AI, Apple Intelligence has not gone well. And believe me, Gruber's not the only one that's been critical of what Apple has done with this. And you're right, Jim. Gruber does kind of tiptoes around them every year. I watch the interviews he's done in the past. He's not talking about, he knows what to say and not say because he knows they're not going to answer. And, he made it humorous over the years, but this one was kind of hit home to them. They'll make the rounds. I would venture to say to a lot of content creators, they've done that in the past. I know Greg Federici has done that before. All these other YouTubers, creators that will probably, you might see them on there, but then again, they may not. Maybe they're backing off altogether this year because of the whole debacle with Apple Intelligence. So it's interesting that it just timed this way with them. I just don't know. I don't even know what his special guests are going to be. It says see below, and then you read the text and says, well, they haven't been here. They're not coming since 10 years ago. This is 10 years that they work. This was one of their 10th year, and then they opted not to.
Well, John's never announced the guests ahead of time.
Yeah, it's true.
So I think the only reason the impression I got was he was just saying who the guest wasn't this year. Yeah. So that people wouldn't buy a ticket thinking I'm going to go see Apple executives. So he was like, I don't want to mislead anybody.
Sure.
Sell tickets on a false premise.
Fair point.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but
I thought he full out said that in the post.
Pretty much.
Well, okay. Eric?
So I think this helps Gruber's reputation a little bit, making him feel like he's, being a little bit more hard-hitting. I think if Apple doesn't have anything that they want to say about Apple Intelligence, they're going to avoid being in front of anyone because everyone is going to want to ask them about Apple Intelligence, and they don't want to talk about it. And going in on a format that's going to put them in front of questions for a relatively long time, even if he kind of avoids the elephant in the room, it's still going to come up as a question, and that's not an emphasis they want. So I think it's good, and they still would have the ability next year to come back saying, hey, we've got a great story, and here it is. Or, maybe they have to stay away for a couple of years until they have a good story.
Okay. Let me throw in, Webb, you want in?
Just a couple of things. I don't disagree with anything that's been said. I think it'll be interesting to see what they do if they come back next year. I think that's going to say a lot about what's going on. Are they putting Gruber in timeout or not? Maybe yes, maybe no. And it's interesting to speculate. But I also agree with David is that if anything can go wrong with AI, I think in my mind, it definitely went wrong this year. And why do they want to subject themselves to any kind of ridicule like that. They're going to say what they're going to say from the podium and from their pre-produced video. And I think that's going to be the end of it. I think one of the big questions I'm wondering is that how long do we think the keynote's going to be? Is it going to be over or under 90 minutes? Is kind of the question, or maybe 75 minutes is the marker. I predict it's going to be a short announcement this year. They're going to show some cool things on the OSs, and that's going to be about it.
I'd be surprised if it's short. His episodes when he does the talk show is always 2 hours plus.
No, I mean the keynote itself is it going to be? Is it going to be?
I think you also. I think you said the Gruber was going to go less than.
No, I meant the keynote itself. That's what I meant.
Gotcha.
I don't think Apple has a lot to talk about this year. I'll put it that way.
I agree with probably 90% of what's been said here. A couple key things, though. As far as getting up in front of everyone and being subjected to questions, why give anybody the baseball bat to beat you with? Just don't show up. So that's fine. I get that. Regarding what Jim said, and Jim put in our private chat, Gruber's quote. What was he going to say? I mean, he's already in a bit of a doghouse, and so he's going to spin it as best he can. And whether he did that for his own benefit or to set expectations or both, pick your thing. I do think, though, that if this is in retaliation, I can almost get it, because I feel like that post was not as aimed at Apple as it was a more personal condemnation of Tim Cook. And that's really kind of out of bounds. You want to blame the organization. You want to challenge the organization. That's fine. You're challenging one guy who, unless he's made some major missteps or made a complete idiot of himself, like Steve Ballmer did way back in the day, you don't attack the individual. And that's where I feel like if that's the case, if it's retaliation, that would be my thinking as to why this one hit home harder than some others. Earlier I said, I had not invited anybody to this show, and I don't invite Apple folks to this show because, first of all, most of the people I know at Apple are always under NDA. And second, I don't believe for a second, and maybe you guys do, and if you do, that's great. I don't believe for a second that anything gets said on Gruber's stage or anybody else's stage that hasn't been vetted by Apple Legal and Apple PR and a dozen other Apple departments. I think they know exactly what they're going to tell. They know exactly what they're going to say. Sure, they can squeeze it around and flip it a little bit, but they aren't going to give away any secrets. I don't recall a secret ever being given away, or as somebody said, "Oh my God, they fleshed some things out." And if they don't have the announcements like Webb said, there's going to be nothing to flesh out. So I show up. Jeff, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. I started talking over you. The thing about Apple's not going to say anything at Gruber's event or anyone else's event that isn't already vetted. To back up what you said as truth, I have sat in the audience on many of Gruber's events, and I remember sitting there watching Apple senior level executives on stage looking at their handler who's sitting on stage with them to make sure they could answer the question. And it's weird to watch because, here's Gruber. So, tell me about the new thing that Siri does where it goes and buys your groceries, whatever it is. And then here's Craig Federighi, and before he answers, he does this. And he's looking at the handler, and the handler goes, and then he answers the question.
Yeah. Yep. And Jeff, you know what? Now that you say that, I don't think I realized the handler was there, but I have seen those moves where, they're kind of looking off stage or looking to somewhere for direction, and everybody laughs about it as if they're, maybe consulting their own mental notes. And if you're saying they're consulting a handler, that actually makes a lot more sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would have thought Craig Federighi was his own handler.
You would think, but he works for Apple.
Yeah.
So this to me is not a big thing. I think John spun it very well. I think he had to. I don't agree with a lot of things in that post, and I definitely don't agree with the tone of the post. And so, if he had gotten the Apple people on stage, it could have gone one of two ways. Either he could have danced around it and played nice, and everybody would have talked about him being a sellout, or he could have been an attack dog and, really burned his relationship with Apple. So in a lot of ways, this may be the best thing that could have happened for everybody involved, is just let us speculate on what the real reasons are and the real thinking is and move on. And it'll be forgotten in a year or so.
It'll be forgotten by Wednesday.
Well, yeah, good point. So let's see.
But I'm not sure I understand why you think John spun this. I think it was Eric. I agree with him that this is probably somewhat positive for John. I don't see how it's bad for him.
If you don't see being scolded by Apple like this, because obviously John was very much in their favor. If you interpret it as a scolding, well, that can't be good for him. I wouldn't think.
I see it as more they're afraid to show up.
Well, that's the beauty of this. You can choose to interpret it as you wish. So,
I wonder how this all came about 10 years ago. Who approached who? I kind of always had thought that probably somebody at Apple, whoever it was, hey, what if I showed up on your show?
Yeah. Well, water under the bridge now, because they're not showing up on the show unless there's a big surprise coming. I do want to get the chat room in. Barry said the ATP hosts are much harsher on Tim Cook than Gruber.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what do you think about John Syracuse?
Well, and just to my recollection, John hasn't had a whole lot of Apple guests on his show, so so we'll just have to.
They'd have Chris Lattner.
Okay, so it is what it is. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. We'll find out what happens at John's show next week, and we'll see what Apple's message is, if any, and where else they choose to interact. I'm looking forward to the announcements, whatever they are, and we'll go from there. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.